Hello, welcome to More Yoga with me, Emily. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, I thought that we would work towards one of, I would say, one of the most popular yoga poses, and it's called Pigeon, or more specifically, Pigeon Prep. Because the full expression of Pigeon pose has the one leg in front, one leg back with the knee bent, grabbing it, doing some sort of weird back bend. We're not going to get all the way there. You might never get all the way there. I will never get all the way there, but we'll loosen up the muscles that are then worked in pigeon prep, or even pigeon, so that you can just see what the differences are. So we're going to get a lot into the glutes and the hip flexors and a little bit into the quads. Now for pigeon prep, it's really useful if you have blocks or pillows or some sort of blanket or towel or something that you can use to help prop your front hip up. And if you don't worry about it. It's just going to feel slightly more awkward unless pigeon is a really comfortable pose for you. So let's start lying down on that. Yeah, on your back. On your back, she says, like a drill sergeant. Is this yoga? What is this? And you might choose to have your knees bent or straight or whatever feels comfortable for you. Arms, however you want them. I'm going to wrap my shoulder blades onto my back just a little bit more to get a touch more opening through the chest and a little lift through the heart. And for 3 breaths, inhale through your nose. And exhale, sigh. The breath away. A couple more. And then continue breathing however you need to, in and out through your nose, at your mouth. And start to focus on your breath a little bit more. Notice your inhale and your exhale. Notice how your breath is flowing. If it feels really smooth or open, then acknowledge that. If you feel any sticky or choppy spots along the way, you might gently try to lengthen through those parts. Just smooth the breath out a little bit more. And naturally, when we start to pay attention to the breath, it will start to slow down, but you don't need to force it. You don't need to deepen the breath. Just observe. And for me, one of my biggest challenges in pigeon pose is not the physical nature of it, but more the mental nature. My mind starts to race. So this is good practice for me anyway, of bringing my focus back to my breath every time a new thought starts to creep in. Last couple breaths here. And then gently start to flicker your eyelids open. Oh, take a big yawning stretch if you'd like to, or a little wiggle of the fingertips or toes, any kind of movement that will help you sort of wake up a little bit more. And then bring your feet to the floor, mat width apart, so, pretty wide. Allow the knees to just gently windshield wiper from one side to the other. Pigeon prep is sometimes not a great pose for those of us with tender knees, so I will always give you variations, and you don't have to force yourself into something that is painful. In fact, never force yourself into a yoga pose if it feels painful. Okay, plant your left leg and then cross the right ankle over top of the left thigh. And then keep this ankle really active so that we don't unintentionally sickle the joint. And you could rock a little bit from side to side. You might choose to de-weight that leg and draw it toward you, but keep the rocking going from side to side. Maybe you're just sort of giving that little draw of belly button to spine and using your core, or you could interlace your hands behind the left thigh. Again, if you've lost the activation on that right ankle, peel the toes back toward the shin. And then pause for a couple moments, a couple breaths. Just starting to feel that release on the outer right hip, possibly through the IT band. But this is a very similar position, right? What the right leg is in right now is very similar to what it will be in pigeon prep. Perhaps not the angle of the shin, but you can even mess with that. You could bring it further down the thigh if you wish. It's a bit slippery sometimes. Last couple breaths here. And then release your left leg, shake it out a little bit. And then when you're ready, we'll switch sides. The right leg comes to the earth, cross the left ankle over top of the right thigh, and then start to draw the legs towards you. If you wish, you could just keep the right foot on the floor and take a little rock from side to side. Sometimes it feels good even drawing circles here. With your legs, obviously not like taking paper, drawing circles with a pen. You could do that if you wish. Art and yoga combined at the same time. Flex the left ankle a little bit more, and maybe you draw the right thigh toward you. Now it's always a bit easier if you're able to thread that left hand through the window of the legs to grab the back of the right thigh, rather than trying to wrap your arm around your legs. And then maybe you're moving, maybe you're still. Right? Different side can demand a different stretch, a different way of releasing the tension. Last breath here. And then gently release. Whew, shake it all out. Wiggle, wobble, wibble, wobble. And then maybe take a little rock from side to side. And then you can join me if you want, rocking and rolling up and down your spine. You might play with it a little bit. Shoulder blades to sit bones, to shoulder blades to sit bones. If that doesn't feel good, then by all means, roll to one side and press yourself up. And then let's meet on hands and knees. So eventually sitting up with knees underneath your hips, toes can be tucked or untucked, and then hands outer shoulder width apart or wider. A little draw of belly button to spine, and then inhale, lift the tailbone to the sky, hollow through the lower back, broaden through the collarbones. Exhale, round, tuck the tailbone under, really press the floor away from you. And then inhale, the cow. Exhale, round into cat. As always, if there's any other natural movement that you would like to take here, feel free to move how you need to. And you're probably pros at this now, right? Especially when no one is watching us. We really feel like we can Move in ways that might look ridiculous, but feel really nice. And then gently come back to center. Again, feeling just that little lift of your belly button to spine. And then take your right hand in front of the left hand. It might be on top, it might be further forward, just depending on the length of your arms and your torso. And then as you exhale, send your hips back. So you're feeling that long line through the right side of the body. You might bow into it a little bit more. You could come down onto a forearm on one side. Personally, I find I get a little bit more tension, a little bit more release if I stay up on my palms. And then slowly inhale, come back to center, and then we'll switch sides. Left hand crosses in front of the right hand, as far forward or close to it as you need to go. And then as you exhale, send the hips back. So now finding that length on the left side of the body. Maybe you stay up high, maybe you fold forward a little bit more. And then slowly come back to center. Little wiggle or shake. Make sure your hands are nice and wide. They haven't migrated back to the center line. Tuck your toes. I'm just going to fix my top so I don't flash everybody. And on your exhale, lift the hips up and back into downward facing dog. You could pedal the heels to the floor if you'd like to. Your knees could be deeply bent, so much so that your belly is resting on your thighs. You might wag your tail from side to side, getting more of those stretches through the side body. And then start to press the floor away a little bit more with your hands, taking the weight into the knuckles and the finger pads and out of the heels of the hands. Last breath here. And then bend your knees, look forward. On your exhale, walk, step, or hop to the top edge of the mat, standing forward fold. You might sway a little bit from side to side. You could clasp opposite elbows with hands for more traction through the spine if you like. And you might think, Emily, why are we doing standing forward fold? Hamstrings aren't really anything that aren't a muscle group that Pigeon focuses on. Well, that's a good question. I feel like we should get, if we're working on one side of the leg, we might as well get the other side of the leg as well. So, and of course, you're also getting a glutes release here too, particularly if your knees are bent, and a release through the lower back. And gently unclasp your hands. Fire up the feet a little bit more, and with fingertips to your shins, inhale, little partway lift. Exhale, let it all go. Couple more. And bend your knees slowly, start to roll up to standing. One vertebra at a time, slow as you need to go, till eventually you come all the way up to standing. Little wiggle or loop of the shoulders, up, back, and down. Feel of the hug of the legs toward the center line. Tailbone to the earth slightly, just till you feel the belly button engaged toward your spine. Shoulder blades on your back. On your inhale, sweep the arms up to the sky. Maybe follow with your gaze. Exhale, dive or fold down to the earth. Forward fold. Inhale, little partway lift, lengthening through the spine. Exhale, fold. Charge your legs. Inhale, sweep all the way up to the sky. And exhale, hands to prayer. Same thing. Inhale to the sky. And exhale, forward fold. Inhale, lift up partway. Exhale, fold. Inhale, sweep all the way up to the sky. And exhale, hands to prayer. Woo. Last time. Exhale, hands to prayer. You might stay here or release them by your side. Eyes open or closed, just for a couple breaths. And then gently flicker your eyelids open. Shake it out a little bit. All right, send all the weight over to your right leg. Little buoyancy on that supporting knee. And then you might need a wall or something to hold on to for a little bit more stability here. Gently kick your left heel to your bum. So this is similar to what we did quite recently, but on the floor, right? It's just a standing quad stretch. But my posture is not great here. So nice long spine, wrap your shoulder onto your back, hug the legs toward each other. Think of directing your kneecap on that left leg down. Hug the heel into the bum a little bit more so you're feeling that tension on the front of the thigh. Now, if you bend the supporting knee and start to press your hips forward even more, you could use both hands on that foot. Then you might start to feel it in the hip flexors as well. One of the quadricep muscles, the rectus femoris, I believe, also crosses the hip joint. So it acts as a hip flexor as well as a knee extensor. You might ask, why are we doing quads? Well, in the full expression of pigeon, right, that back leg is kind of doing this. And when you're ready, shake it out, release. We'll switch to the opposite side. Again, we haven't done any balancing prep, so there's no shame in using a wall for more balance, particularly from one side to the other. Things can be a little wobbly. Wrap that shoulder back, hug the legs toward each other, kneecap points down. And then draw the heel in toward the bum a little bit more. Maybe you squeeze your bum to press the hips forward slightly. Whew, and then one side sometimes feels quite a bit more gnarly than the other. Maybe we use both hands. Just make sure that you're not cranking into the low back. So that's why the squeeze of the bum helps. Or you might use your left arm for a little bit of counterbalance. And then release, shake it out a little bit. All right, and then coming back to the top edge of your mat, if you weren't already there. Inhale, sweep up to the sky. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, little partway lift. Exhale, fold. Bend your knees enough that you can plant your hands to the floor, and then step back to hands and knees. So I probably psyched you out a little bit there. Little wiggle or shake. I'm going to turn to face you now. And then on your inhales, step your right leg forward. So if you have a chip foam block or a pillow or something that you can bring underneath the left knee, I am going to highly recommend that you cushion that knee. You can even double up your mat and roll it underneath the left knee, and then back out of the hips to start with. So the back leg in pigeon gets a huge hip flexor release, particularly in the upright version, right? As soon as you fold forward, then you're flexing at the hips, so you don't get as much of a release, but you're really in deep, deep, technically hyperextension of that hip and the back leg. So let's get into the hip flexors. Back out of the hips a little bit. Hug the legs toward each other. Squeeze the bum on the left leg. Belly button to spine. Shoulder blades on the back, maintaining all that activation. Then shift forward into that front knee. Back toes could be tucked or maybe untucked. So they're kind of like the tops of the toes are on the floor, like you would be in cobra pose. And then squeeze the bum like crazy on that back leg. And I promise all of this stuff that we're doing will make pigeon prep or reclined pigeon or wherever we end up quite a bit more accessible for you. A few more breaths here. Some of you maybe go down choose to go down a little bit deeper. Now we're getting a hyper extension of that back hip. I really like this really active variation though. It just takes a lot of work. Squeezing the butt, squeezing the butt, squeezing the butt. Right? Couple more breaths here. Okay, now back out of the hips slightly. I'm going to bring the left hand down to the floor or to a block. If you have one, you could always be on your fist or fingertips. And then heel into the front foot out a little bit wider and allow the hips to sink. So now we're getting slightly into the groin in that front leg. The trick here though is, if it's available to you, to reach around with the right hand, bending the back knee for the grab of the back foot. Now this is very deep, and I get it. It's not going to be accessible to everybody. The more that you're able to lift your left side up, the more accessible it becomes. Now, if you don't have that, don't worry. Just stay here in this position. If you have the grab of the back foot, make sure you're not all the way back on your kneecap though, that you're kind of resting on the thigh. Last couple of breaths here. And if you have the back foot, gently release it. Unwind back out of the hips a little bit. Do a little wiggle. And then step back, hands and knees. Whew. Little wiggle or shake. Just notice for a couple breaths how you feel from one side to the other. For me, it's pretty different today. If you're using any padding, switch it to the left side and then step. Nope. Switch it to the right side. Step your left foot forward. There we go. You don't want to do the same side twice. Well, you could actually if you're feeling particularly tight. Back out of the hips. Squeeze the bum. Hug the legs toward each other. Belly button to spine. Shoulder blades on the back. And then sink forward into your active lunge. Again, back toes could be tucked or they could be untucked. Really squeeze the bum on that back leg though, and drive through the front heel so that you get a little bit more balance, a little bit more support. And then we breathe. Right, the more you squeeze the bum on that right side, the more you're going to feel the opening through the hip flexors in particular. And then gently release your right hand to the floor or to a block or a stack of books even if you have them. Heel into the front foot out a little bit wider and on an angle and allow the hips to sink. Wrap that bottom shoulder onto your back. All right, so step one is here. Getting a little bit more into the hip flexors, a little bit into the quads. If you would like to get a bit deeper into the quads, reach around with the left hand for the grab of the back foot. But again, make sure you're not on your kneecap, you're on your thigh. And then feel that little hug of the legs back toward the center line, so you're not just hanging out here. Right? Last breath here. If you have the back foot, gently release it, unwind, back out of the hips, come back to hands and knees, little wiggle, little shake, and then you might even just sit down. Swing the legs forward, shake them out a little bit. So we'll move into pigeon prep now. As always, if you know that pigeon's not going to be good on your knees, you can bring one shin forward, one leg out to the side, and take more of a 1990 stretch, or you can go back to where we began, on your back with that figure four stretch, one ankle crossed over top. If, however, you would like to do pigeon prep, then bring your right shin forward, and then you might just sort of sweep the left leg behind you. There are different ways of getting into pigeon. And then you walk the back knee back and in slightly. Now notice my front shin is not parallel with the top edge of my mat. And in fact, I'm going to say that most of you will not want to go there. It becomes really, really hard on that front knee. And it doesn't matter if this ankle is active or not. If a yoga teacher tells you to flex your ankle to protect your knee in pigeon, ask them why it does that, and they won't be able to answer you because it doesn't. Okay, so with that back leg walked back, maybe you're able to hug the legs toward each other in kind of like a scissoring motion to stay up. And then this is where blocks or pillows or anything become really useful. Maybe you keep them underneath your hands to bring the floor up to you. You could bring a block underneath that front hip so that you don't have to use quite as much strength to be here. Right? Remember, pigeon prep is going to be like this. Maybe the back leg bends. Most of you, however, I think are probably going to want to go into reclined pigeon because then it's a lot less work and you get a really deep release on the hips on that front leg. Now my leg is cramping, but stay where you are. Oh, there we go. A few more breaths. And then notice where your mind has gone in pigeon. Maybe it's just me whose mind wanders. And then if you're folded forward, slowly press yourself up. Lean to your hips on the right side. And then swing the left leg forward. Shake out the legs a little bit. And then we will switch sides. So again, if you're doing 1990, left shin forward, right shin just out to the side. Really gentle variation. If you want to join me in pigeon prep, then that left shin stays forward. Remember, not parallel to the top edge of the mat, so probably tucked in. And it helps if your left knee is kind of a little bit wider than your left hand. And then allow that right leg to start to snake back. Walk the knee in and back a little bit. Different side, totally different experience. Right? Maybe you want the blocks under your hands if you have them, or a block under the front hip. I've also seen people put one under the back thigh. These are a little bit diggy. They're not quite as soft as the foam bricks, so I'm not going to do that. And you might stay here, you might bend the back leg, or maybe you start to recline. Now, particularly if you're folding forward, try to find your breath. And we'll spend about 8 more breaths in the pose, wherever you need to be. If you're folded forward, start to gently press your body back up. Shift to your hips on the left side. Swing the right leg forward. Ha! Hands behind you. And take a little windshield wiper of the knees. And then plant your feet. If you'd like to join me in a Pilates roll down, then tuck your tailbone up or under and start to roll down. Otherwise, just make your way down onto your back, however feels best for you. And then we'll take one last little stretch before the rest. Knees wide out toward your shoulders or armpits. You might stay here or kick your feet up to the sky for happy baby. Just kind of helps press into the low back and the pelvis and reset the pelvis from that single leg work. If there's anything else you feel like you need before your rest, feel free to take it. You can always pause the video or just let it run its course. Otherwise, think about where you would like to go, whether it's flat on your back, legs bent or straight. In fact, the long legs might feel really good right now after pigeon. You might rest on your side or in a seated meditation or in child's pose, really wherever you need to be, wherever you will be at ease. And then for 3 breaths, inhale through your nose, exhale, sigh, breath away. Couple more. And continue breathing however you need to, whether it's in and out through your nose or your mouth. But let go of your breath control. And let go of any last bit of muscle gripping or tension. And with each exhale, let your body melt a little bit deeper into the earth. Thank you so much for joining me today. Namaste.